Hello, everybody. Xpallodoc here, and I have a guest who I will have introduce himself. Go ahead.
Is this where you just want me to do the teal, the something, something, something? It would feel weird if I didn't, but I have no idea what to say.
That's pretty good. Yeah, this is TLDR with like a little kind of symbol. But if you just type in TLDR, and I'll put a link into the description. Um, you will pull him up, and he does really good videos. Which the best way I can describe them is they're very logical videos that very common sense that they always have. Well, go ahead. What is that title you always put in the videos that of yours?
The what?
It's like did not. I forget how it goes exactly. It's
Yeah, the general format is such a doesn't understand, and it kind of covers like people who are either being intentionally misleading in something or just have completely missed the point of what they're saying. But there is some other stuff as well.
yeah, it's pretty much that, and it's really good. And one of the videos that kind of where I started commenting was with sexy MGTOW in it, where you kind of go step by step, kind of humorously, just kind of look into a lot of the stuff he says, and it was just kind of really funny for me. And um, sadly, Sexy MGTOW got some kind of strike on his account. I don't know what happened there. Obviously, you don't. Neither do I or anyone here support as far as what's it called, flagging videos. You're for free speech. You seem very strongly in support of things like freedom of speech.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. I did mention that even at the end of that video. I was like, yeah, if it wasn't me that did it, but it's like if it is someone who was subscribed to me, who saw my content, was like, I'm gonna go and flag that dick now, just like for the cause or something. It's like, no, don't do that. Under no circumstances should you do that. Everyone should be allowed to express their opinion, even if it's opposing, because that way, you're never going to progress your views on anything unless your view is challenged and unless you have to actually think about things. So we need to hear all sides of a potential philosophy like that.
yeah, well,
And it's
I
funny
guess
because Sexy MGTOW actually complained that it was like, oh, you're taking my video out of context, you're giving me like no grounds to speak. It's like, hang on, dude, I've basically just mirrored your content for you. What are you complaining about?
yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's pretty good for him to get that, and that's kind of how I got you in this hangout. I was trying to get you to not necessarily like get in an argument or something like that with me, but I was trying to get you to do one of your episodes on me. I was gonna like put a girl in a bikini or something like that, and you're like, no, why don't we just have a conversation? And I guess that is much more straightforward than me putting some girl in a bikini and making some video addressed at you. So I'm very glad that you agreed to come to my second channel here and do this hangout. So thank you very much.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
And we have an alright number. Like it shows me how many viewers I have live, and
It's going up.
for just for like 11 a.m. At a random time for me, yeah, 23 live viewers, pretty good. Um, so yesterday we had a conversation. We actually ended up talking for probably almost an hour, I believe.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talked about was it's something that I started in the comments section of one of your videos, and it's I I think that men and women have competing sexual mating strategies that kind of clash with each other.
Hmm.
That being that if women follow their sexual interests, it's to men's detriment, or vice versa. Men following their sexual interests, it's to not necessarily a woman's detriment, but it's going against what the woman would be trying to achieve, is kind of the way I'm going to frame it. Uh, what do you think about when I say that? What comes to mind when I say something like that?
I want more clarification immediately. Because you say that they're competing, but Well, ultimately, if we're talking about purely as a mating strategy, the goal is the same thing, which is to procreate.
All right.
So if one side of a species wants to get the other side to mate with it, they're going to do things to attract that, not repel it, and vice versa.
Uh,
Or they're
yes.
going to select the other side based on traits that they find desirable.
Yes. And
So this is why I'd like you to kind of clarify what exactly you mean by competing.
that's fair. It goes back to something men going their own way, a guy who talks about MGTOW, the acronym MGTOW, MGTOW, an acronym for men going their own way. The phrase that I like to tag my videos with, and basically that goes to the main agreed advice that us people who tag our content with that do is never to get married and never to do anything that kind of resembles a marriage. And for me, it's not necessarily don't have kids, but at least I'd like people to be aware of all the risks involving kids, and those risks are very one way. And what we call that is the gynocentric society, a society that caters towards women's mating strategy, which is different than men's, being the key term here being hypergamy, women being attracted to men through hypergamy, men being attracted to women through youth, femininity, and hourglass shape, which is also a sign of femininity. Uh, Now, with these differences in attraction, these are two different. They certainly uh, would would encompass two different strategies. You wouldn't argue that men and women use the same strategies in general. Now, at that point, I haven't really made the case yet that they're competing strategies, but you do see what I'm saying so far as men and women having different mating strategies.
Different, yes. But I wouldn't say that different necessarily implies that they are competing.
All right, well, before I go further, just give me some of your observations. I'm sure you observe you. For those who don't know, hypergamy is kind of colloquially, I mean, I guess could be described as a woman's tendency to marry up. But if we're not necessarily talking about marriage, we're talking about one way to describe it is women's always looking for utility, always looking for utility. And it isn't necessarily gold digging. In fact, I would argue it rarely takes the gold digging aspect. It's mostly just, I would describe as women trying to go for the most animalistic man that they can handle. It's not necessarily the most animalistic man, it's just in their comfort zone, the most animalistic man that they can find. Uh, who, that's kind of the way I would personally describe it. But how do you,
Well,
before I go
I'm going
into,
to interject on
yeah,
that.
go
You
ahead.
say like that they want the most animalistic side. Well, that doesn't actually explain gold digging at all, because if they're a gold digger, they're not necessarily going after someone animalistic. I mean, you could chase someone like Bill Gates as a gold digger. You'd hardly define him as the most brutal, primitive ape of a man.
All right. Uh, they're looking for utility, and we are living in closer and closer to what I would call a zero scarcity society. We don't live in a zero scarcity society, but for the most part in the West, these women do not have to worry about food. They do not have to worry about shelter. They don't really have to worry about money necessarily.
Do men?
They do men
Yeah.
more than women, I would say, more than women. There's
And obviously, I
more.
recognise that you're talking from America and I'm in Britain, so we do have sort of different governmental rules around this, which is obviously going to affect it differently. So I appreciate that you might have a different view of that than I will, but we,
I
we will
don't
explore
think
this a bit.
I don't think men have to necessarily in the United States worry about money. You can support yourself on a shitty job, and if you really aren't going to work, there's plenty of charity, and there are government programs. You're not going to live the most comfortable life. I think as a woman, society is more willing to accept you. I think your family is more, society and everyone's more willing to just let you live at home, different things like that. But whether you're a girl who works or a girl who's staying at home working as a cashier or not working at all, for the most part, men and women don't have to worry about money. And I would say women more so than men are able to just get taken care of or just have it easy, not have expectations. You can be very attractive because of hypergamy. Hypergamy can lend itself just to status too. A woman being able to date fine as long as she's young, if she's a cashier or whatever, and maybe a man. I mean, being a cashier just wouldn't do it. It can be a lot of things. It's kind of like they're casting agents a lot of the time. A man's not so much hourglass shape. Does she have that youthful look? And a woman technically can look youthful into her 30s, whatever. And I'm not saying men aren't attracted to older women because they are, but this is just a guiding principle I'm pointing out because, of course, men are attracted to fat women in all sorts of shapes and size. But this is the guiding principle as well as I'm pointing out a guiding principle for women who seek utility. And it doesn't necessarily mean money. It could mean just she's seeking for entertainment maybe because maybe she doesn't have to worry about money. She doesn't have to worry about these things. So what is the utility she's seeking? Entertainment, drama, just something like that. It doesn't, I would say it's not, a lot of times it's not necessarily money. And of course there are only so many men with money in any given society, whether it be the United States or whether it be a poor country. There aren't always men with money, and I would argue a lot of what women are attracted to is also being dominated, coming into a man's territory, which that's not at all how a man is attracted to a woman. As far as women usually don't have territories, historically speaking. Certainly there were queens and just things like that, but
Well, the biggest territory in human history, which is the British Empire in the early 1900s, was ruled by a woman. So actually, the largest historical empire ever was ruled by a woman.
yeah, that is true, but it would be a territory created through a military of men and a body of men, and a birthright created through men that was going to go to a man, but she wasn't married. I'm not no historian or anything like that, so maybe I'm wrong about something I'm saying, but for
Well,
the
she
most
was
part,
she was married.
the general idea is that men create the territory. It wasn't a female army, it wasn't a female guard force, um, all that. The general idea is that men create these territories, not women. And so to get to the point, women are about taking as much as they can get. And as a man, if you go into that mode of giving as much as you can get, it is going to be to your detriment, both in mating strategy. You're going to give a lot to get less, and you might not even end up with kids that are biologically yours at that point, because I call that beta provider game, to use a term that we use in MGTOW a lot, being beta male. And I don't believe in alpha males or beta males as far as humans, but I do believe that you can act in a certain way that can be characterized as beta provider game, which is a very poor way of going into this, especially in modern times. And there would be alpha game, and that would be more less of being a provider and more of just getting women's affections and, of course, sex. And that isn't necessarily to a woman's benefit, but it's to the man's benefit, as opposed to being a beta provider, which means you might not necessarily even get to father your own children, but you're just giving resources, and you're getting less for it. You're getting less sex, but you're giving your resources to one specific girl who is going to be less grateful and less happy with that.
Okay, so the first things that I sort of want to bring up, because that you've covered quite a lot in all of that. So I want to sort of look at what you mean by when you say women only want men for utility. Now, you say that it's like, oh, they might just want his money, or they might just want some sort of entertainment from him, something that's going to amuse them. What is it about that that, well, again, doesn't apply to men as well? I mean, when a man looks for a relationship with a woman, he may only also be looking for entertainment.
Well,
What makes this exclusively a female trait?
men aren't, for the most part, men aren't looking for entertainment past sexual entertainment. If a girl's really cute, just
As
being
in,
around
does
her,
that not count as entertainment?
it counts. It's just it's a different kind of entertainment. Certainly, women are looking for sexual entertainment as well. It's just a very again uh, the way men and women look at sex is very different. I would say as far as the whole dominant man seeks to get a woman exclusively his, not necessarily, but he's trying to control her, get her into his territory, whatever. Um, a woman would be more seeking to get attention from men.
Yeah, okay. This is a sort of good point because this is something that is, kind of hinted at socially across all the circles where women generally enjoy men who take the lead more in their relationship. But does that necessarily immediately have to translate to women wanting multiple men? Is it not possible that women can want a man who's going to sort of take control, take a lead, something like that, and then be exclusively happy with just that guy? As in, she's looking for that, but within a monogamous setting.
I think there's something called the honeymoon phase, and for the most part, I would say for a while she could be happy with one guy, but without a lot of consequences, and even then she's not going to be happy with just one guy. But in the past, there were a lot of consequences for a woman. Um, she would pretty much be on the street and hooking and lose her children if she left a man. Uh, but now she gets to leave with cash and prizes and maybe be in a better situation than she was when she was with the man, if we're talking about like a marriage. And if you're talking about just dating, because of sexual market value, if you're dating someone who is high on sexual market value, say, a younger, early 20s girl, something like that, who an early 20s girl who's average, who isn't fat, is just going to have a very high sexual market value compared to, for the most part, any man who isn't, say, famous. He's just going to have a high sexual market value just because of the way society and people view these matters, women being more sexually attractive as far as gathering attention than men. A woman gets approached a lot, but just to go back to what you said, because I'm kind of losing track, can women be happy? Yeah, I don't think women can be happy. Women can't love in the way that a man can love. A man can fall in love with a woman, get this whole I want to protect this woman, I want to make this woman mine sort of like kind of as like viewing her almost like I would say property, like a very not like obviously not like a chair or a cow or something like that, but view woman in a woman property sort of way. I don't know, just something that he wants to protect and make his. And women cannot do that and don't do that with men. Women view men as a utility where that they're constantly seeking for the bigger, better thing, and they are going to bigger, better things, and they won't necessarily act, but it is in their nature to want that, and because of the way society is,
Okay, but
um,
can I just pull you back into the topic here?
yeah, thank
What
you.
has this got to do with competing mating strategies? How is this proving that they are in competition with each other?
A
How
lot
is
of
this
these
proving that men and
laws,
women are competing?
a lot of these laws,
Because okay, I'm gonna do my thing here because I think this kind of needs to be established. Like, what exactly is competition when it comes down to breeding? Well, competition, there would be no point in males and females of any species competing with each other, because obviously if they did that, the species would fall apart. There would be no reproduction. Obviously, a little bit of competition will be fine, in the same way that you might get some females will test males, but that's still not as strict a competition as in the sort of male on male competition or the female on female competition. Males obviously compete with each other. If we look throughout mammals, through like sparring and whatnot like that, or in some cases through display or something like that, they're showing like, hey, this is my desirable trait, be it they look absolutely fabulous, or be it that they can beat the shit out of everything else. That is their competition with each other. And the key thing about the competition is that there's not necessarily any malice in it, it's just something out of necessity. And then female competition might be a little bit less violent than that. Female competition might be a little bit more sort of on the social coercion and manipulation side, which is why when you talk about humans and this supposed slut-shaming nonsense that goes around, you actually realize that it's mostly women that perpetuate that, and that it tends to just be a general insult to try and lower someone else's value, thus pushing the person who's throwing the accusation higher up on the social ladder, making them appear more desirable.
well,
So you can see that
that's
there's competition within the male sphere and there's competition within the female sphere. But what is the competition between the two? Where is the female competition with the male, apart from basically being judgy? Apart from women basically looking at some men and saying, well, I don't want that guy, don't want that guy, don't want that guy will do. And what's the male competition with the female? Are men intentionally taking women down? Are they intentionally making other women undesirable? Well, no, they're not, because that would run counter to the male breeding strategy of, look at me, I'm amazing, and I can have all of you.
mhm.
So
Well,
where is this competition from one side to the other?
well, it's just going back to slut shaming. That goes to men and women being attracted to different things, and what it is women are attracted to sluts. Women would find a man who sleeps around to be pre-selected by other women.
So
It's
you
it's
think that would make them more appealed to them, or that
yeah,
would make
it's definitely
it's
for
this
the
thing,
most
isn't it,
part.
where they say that a woman would rather share a handsome male model with other women than have like an ugly guy all to herself.
Yeah, it's not necessarily ugly guy, but
Well,
a
an
woman,
average guy. I know sort of where you're going with
a
this, so I
woman
think I
is
do.
attracted to men who go around sleeping with lots of women. It's a known thing.
Oh,
Women
okay.
try to
Can I
deny it.
jump in with something
It's
there?
the rock star thing, if you will.
Like I said, can I just jump in with something there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because there is actually an interesting sort of scale that you can look at here. It's called the SOI scale. It stands for Sociosexual Orientation Inventory. And basically, it's a means of measuring how people are attracted to other people. In fact, I'm just going to read a little paragraph about it here because it's quite interesting, which is average differences in mating strategies between sexes do not entail uniformity in mating strategies within the sexes, and in humans, such as within variation, is substantial. Individual differences in mating strategies are commonly measured using the SOI scale, the social, let's try and say this properly, shall we? Sociosexual Orientation Inventory. A questionnaire that includes items assessing past sexual behavior, anticipated future sexual behavior, and openness to casual sex. Higher scores on the SOI scale indicate a sexually unrestricted mating strategy, and lower scores on the SOI indicate a sexually restricted mating strategy. Several studies have found that scores on SOI are related to mate preference, with more sexually restricted individuals preferring personal and parenting qualities in a mate, i.e., responsibility, loyalty, and whatnot, and less sexually restricted individuals preferring qualities related to physical attractiveness and social visibility. So what you've got there is you basically have a scale by which you can measure an individual's traits, and then you will find that what traits they find attractive within a mate, and there is a correlation between the two, like that. And it kind of sort of throws a bit of a wrench in that, because then you realize that when you have women on the low end of the SOI scale, they don't find that sort of behavior attractive. And this kind of throws a bit of a wrench in the works of this female nature. This is what all women are attracted to. All women are attracted to the alpha male going out with their money and their Rolex fucking everything that moves. The reality is, no, there are women out there who are not going to find that attractive.
All right, it was
This
just
is an objective, measurable way of, well, as objective as a social science.
how do they measure this through what's it called, like
Social
surveys?
Sociosexual orientation inventory. Yes, it's measured through a survey,
Okay.
which has actually been conducted in 48 different nations throughout the world.
Mhm.
It's been translated into 25 different languages, and it's actually been found that these sorts of trends are pretty common throughout the world, and that it's not in any way limited to one sex than to any other.
What was just to restate? What was one of the findings they found that, like, what proves that some women, or not some, I guess a statistically significant amount of women are attracted to, what are they attracted to that goes against hypergamy specifically, did you say?
It's when they have a low score on that scale, they prefer personal parenting qualities like responsibility and loyalty, and they would value that over the extroverted personality traits that you would find on higher scoring individuals.
Okay. And I would also argue that these tests don't follow a lot of things I look into. Like, one of the things I look into is age, too. So if someone at an older age, say when they're in their 30s or reaching their 30s, values something like that, but all through their teenage years, early 20s, maybe some of their 20s, preferred the alpha bad boy, I would consider that a very poor trade. Again, beta game, alpha guys people playing alpha game get to have sex with top quality young women, and then someone who is a beta gets to marry and provide for the woman who took the survey maybe at 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, whatever, who is now ridden what we call the cock cell. It's something that we use in MGTOW circles, and it's to describe how women will have sex with lots and get mentally damaged, physically damaged as far as STDs and who knows what else. It's just, we talk about something even called chimeraism sometimes, where there are studies that show that women, when they receive semen in their vaginal cavity, they actually take on some of the male's DNA, and it goes into their bloodstream and crosses the brain-blood barrier, where there have been no real tests going into this, but it probably does affect their mental health.
I'd be careful stating that. Just saying like, oh, it's probably, but unless there is objective proof of it, I'm not necessarily inclined
There's
to believe
objective proof. I do have studies that show objective proof that their DNA of men is found in their brains.
It's present. Yes, I know I've seen that one as well, but I have yet to find one that then goes further to state that it...
Someone needs to fund the test, and here's would describe the actually thought of it. I'm not a scientist, but what they would need to do is put a lot of different semen, probably through, you would put semen, and sometimes you wouldn't put semen, you would put just nothing in. Through your certain test subjects would just get nothing. Some test subjects would get different semen put in them, like, I guess you do it same way you inject whatever, just like artificial insemination. You would then test to see how their behavior changes, and no one's funded this test yet, but it could definitely be done.
Yeah, I think you'd have to question the morality of doing that, because it would be an irreversible process, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yes. First of all, it would be irreversible like that, so if it did have any sort of behavioral effect on it, well, that would be permanent. Second of all, you'd have to be able to measure the behavioral change. and you would have to be able to prove that it was as a result of genetic material being present and not
And
some other exterior factor.
again, I'm no scientist, but I'm sure they could figure a way to do this on rats to start with, to uh, kind of narrow it down to just like I think what you would do is you would give a placebo to some rats, and then you would try different rat semens in the other rats and just monitor to see how that affects behavior. And obviously, then you would have to go on to human testing. But yeah, I think it could be done. I think it'd be highly controversial to show anything like sluttiness has a detriment, which it can already be shown
Well,
without
we
micro.
already know that it has. Well, we don't necessarily know that it has an effect. We know that there is a correlation between that kind of behavior and certain personality
Yeah.
disorders or certain personality traits. But
Well,
it's one of those things you can't necessarily put the cart before the horse every time. In some cases, it's a behavior, it's a mental thing that leads to that behavior, and in some cases, it's kind of a gradual slink into that behavior that leads to some sort of personality problem. So in some cases, it's one way around. In some cases, it's the other. I don't think there's a
people have
definitive
done
way of stating that it's always one followed by the other.
people have done some study. They seem pretty definitive to me. Like I think Stefan only recently released some videos where he put up charts showing when someone starts their sexual activity to how likely they are to have an STD, to just different things like that, to how likely they are to be in a committed relationship, whatever. But it's just it goes back to what I was trying to say. Women are attracted to sluttiness for the most part. They're attracted to seeing a man who lots of women are after seeing a man who is successful,
So what
who has
about the
experience.
psycho jealous bitches? You know the ones that I mean. So who
Oh,
was that girl?
they're
Who's this girl's
they're
number on your phone? Who's that? What's that? Huh?
oh yeah. Well, they're gonna be psycho jealous. They're trying to get you to themselves. But I'm just getting at the
Well,
fact that women are attracted to
that
sluttiness
means
men,
they're not
and
attracted
men
to violence, though. Surely that kind of indicates the opposite.
they're not attracted to what?
Well, surely that indicates the opposite. That there are women out there
Well,
who are attracted to having exclusivity on a mate.
oh, they try to get, again, it goes back to beta game, alpha game. They try to make you a beta provider no matter what. Whether you're an alpha or not, they're going to try to make you their bitch, which again goes to the fact that you have a competing interest. They will try to lock you down. Your interest is actually to not be locked down. And I'm not saying that it's in interest of society or anything. I'm just pointing out that a man at his best, a man who's a king, would technically want a harem. If you really had your perfect ability, you would want your own harem, basically. And they don't want you to have your own harem. They're going to be
Would
attracted to
women not
that.
want that?
Do women want a harem? Sure. They want a harem, definitely. And a lot of women today do have a harem, but that's very unattractive to a man. And and women sometimes have a problem. They call it a double standard, but we're looking at two different things here. And for the most part, a man is attracted to um, exclusivity. He's attracted to not necessarily can I only date one woman myself, but am I the only one getting this woman? Is this woman virginal? Do I view this woman as virginal? He's more likely to commit, more likely to be attracted to a woman, all things being equal. And women know this. That's another reason why they slut shame is they want to make other women seem less attractive, that kind of thing. But what it is a woman looks at a man, and if she views that man as a virgin, someone who has no experience, she's going to it's going to be a mark against him. It doesn't mean she won't go out with him. It doesn't mean she doesn't want to have sex with him, but it will be a mark against him. A man looks at women, and it doesn't mean he's not going to screw a slut, but it will be a mark against her, all things being equal, if she's competing for attention with a girl who he views as more pure. And these are differences in attraction.
But surely
And
this is actually just a manifestation of short-term versus long-term mating strategies. What people want in one situation is different from what they'll want in another situation. I mean,
no,
there are situations absolutely where
it's either
men
way.
will
It's
go
either
out
way.
and say, you know
All
what,
things being
I'm
equal,
gonna fuck something tonight, and they will find the absolute loosest
given
disease-ridden whore that they can because they don't
given the
give a fuck.
choice, given the choice, given the choice, whether it be short-term or long-term, and certainly long-term, if you're talking long-term anything, there's more thought put into it. At least you have more time. It's not going to get to long-term, given less attractive qualities, although plenty of people marry sluts. This is just a general guide point I'm trying to talk here and point something out that gets talked about a lot. The whole, there's a double standard, no, there's not a double standard. Men and women are attracted, I just point out men and women are attracted to different things. And I think you know what I'm talking about as far
Oh
as...
yeah, I know exactly sort of where you're going with this, but like I'm finding myself very much in the position of being the sort of devil's advocate of MGTOW, where it's kind of like, okay, we make these claims and we can kind of observe patterns here, but prove it.
Yeah, and I can certainly prove it. Like, we're talking about just difference in attraction as far as, like, even things like older, younger. Women like older men because of hypergamy. Uh, Women aren't necessarily so concerned about age. You could, if you were
Again, is
somehow
this
100,
is this a generalized thing that you can say, or is it short term versus long term investment? Again, is
it's
it that a woman
generalized.
will look at will a woman look at any older man and say, well, I'd rather have that, or are
No,
there going to be other
no,
factors?
it has to do with capability too. So if you're in your 30s and you're very confident, and if you're confident, you maybe have a good job, maybe you don't, but if you're confident, you carry yourself well, you're in shape, you're whatever, you are going to be, it doesn't mean you're going to date a young girl. You might date someone closer to your age, but it does mean you're going to have a leg up on someone who's younger than you, someone maybe who's in their early 20s and isn't as confident, isn't as experienced. You're going to have a leg up.
But can you state that it's definitely going to be a leg up, though?
No, no, it won't definitely.
Okay.
Certainly, you're different people. A 21-year-old might outcompete you in certain ways, and often he's going to have more access than you just because of the way society's set up. It's more likely 21-year-olds are going to be in the same circles as opposed to a 31-year-old or 40-year-old man in the same circle as the higher sexual market value women, just because of the way society is. We're not tribal anymore. Just the way society is stratified as far as people being university students or whatever, you're going to have more just accessibility, and that goes back to the territory thing. But what I'm trying to get at is, like, there's been studies done on dating sites where women will generally date within their age group. At least that's who they're looking to date. That's who they're paying attention to on the dating site. They're paying attention to people within a certain age group and older. And it's usually within, they're trying to get people within a few certain amount of years within them. And then men, even as they get older, they're still paying the most attention to this early 20s demographic, no matter how old they get. So that's just a difference in the way men and women look at things in general. And that's where we're getting at to talking about gynocentric. All women are, for the most part, gynocentric. They're very me, and that's based on what I believe, anthropologically speaking, would be the fact that men were the hunters, and women were very much the "what did you bring me?" or just looking around for in the territory created by men, just looking to take as much as they could from the society, shopping, going to the bushes, grabbing as many berries, gathering as much. They were very much the gatherers, very much the trying to get as much as they could be given until they were told no. And with gynocentric laws, it seeks to criminalize male mating strategies as far as, say, prostitution, men providing cash for sex, but it seems to optimize women mating strategies as far as them having children and then being provided child support and not needing to provide sex or anything anymore. So it's a very one-sided coin. I mean, do you see what I'm kind of getting at here as
Yeah,
far as gynocentric
the
laws
point
being
of
in
this
women's
is
benefit?
that we kind of developed a society whereby it would cater to that, but that's because that was the sort of anthropological basis for the competition of our species. The men would have to inevitably compete with each other in order to basically impress females and be able to mate, be able to reproduce, and and the sort of anthropological side there is because of our mating strategy, or because of our breeding strategy, more correctly, I should say, whereby we invest a large amount of time in our young. Specifically, the women invest a large amount of time in their young, because
Well,
obviously they have to be gestated, they have to be fed after birth and all that stuff. A baby is completely helpless without any sort of parent. So we kind of
women
had
need.
to create a society around that, which obviously would have started in small tribalized groups, whereby it would be a case of, well, no, the women have to be protected because in these sorts of circumstances they are effectively unable to fend for themselves, or their ability to fend for themselves is hampered. So it would have to be picked up by other members of the community, that community, or those members generally being male. So that's sort of where this gynocentrism has come from in our species. It was a necessity for us to actually reproduce effectively, and then it's just kind of carried on throughout the ages.
There's certainly a good side to gynocentrism, as far as if society is controlled by men. There's certainly a good side of women, at least anthropologically speaking, trying to get as much as they can as they raise children. But the problem comes with technology and laws, with technology freeing women to compete more or less, not really at the level of men, but being able to get inside and kind of be more capable like men, as far as now they can drive a car. I would say men drive cars on average much better than women, even though women get lower insurance rates. But they get
Well,
to drive a
yeah, that was
car.
actually quite interesting. I was having a conversation with someone about that in the comments section, actually, of one of my videos earlier. Yeah, men actually are statistically involved in less accidents per mile than women. Like, while women have less, it's largely because men tend to drive on average 2 to 4 times as much. And
Yeah,
actually
and I could
women
definitely
are
see that.
involved in larger, they're involved in a larger number, like per mile, but they tend to be less minor incidents.
And
Whereas
just from
when men tend to do their car in, it tends to be a full-on totaled thing, whereas for women it tends to be minor fender bender sort of things, which I
yeah,
always
that's
find quite
fine.
amusing.
That's fine. And hey, I'm sure if the findings were the opposite for some reason that the insurance company wanted to charge women more, that would never be allowed, because we all know
Oh yeah, because it
that
would be
that's one of the big reasons for Obamacare even existing, is it is a tax from men to women who were paying higher healthcare costs and who just needed healthcare more, or at least wanted it more. But going back to what I was trying to say, let's see. Okay, so women get all this technology now that lets them kind of free themselves from historically being just incapable to compete with men for the most part. And I still say they can't really compete with men. But what it's done is now there's new laws. They've got new political powers as far as this whole democracy thing. Everyone gets a vote. That's very rare too. For a long time, it was no one gets a vote, or only people who own property of a certain value get a vote. Then it became all men, and now for the most, not all men, but for the most part all men, and now for the most part all women. So they've been given a lot of political power. So this is very different. And going back to whole society thing, I would say men and um, our mating strategies, which we have agreed they're different.
Yeah,
We,
we're
we, we
still
haven't
not agreeing on
established
where the competition is.
we haven't necessarily
I'm
established
waiting to see the
competition,
competition.
though. Plenty of people see the war of the sexes and supposed war on women, and we're going to go into that. But
Oh yeah, there is
um,
no war on women. We know this.
I
That's
would
actually
say there is. I would say there is a war on their mating strategy. I would say that. That's what I'm going to get into. It's not a war on women, and I would say women are better off to go with the male mating strategy, which is different than the female mating strategy. I would say that, but I would say they're happy, and I wouldn't say they want to do that. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that uh, the laws have become gynocentric through the combination of the technology, which allows women to kind of they don't really do as good a job, but it allows them to kind of get out of the house, and through politics and the way they vote, they're very collective in the way they vote. They're more collective than men, and they have been made a special interest, and so that's enough. It's even a small special interest. Like gays are about 2% or something like that of the country, but they've been made a special interest. So, and also, excuse me, they're a special interest that women view as their like mascots. So that's another reason why all this LGBT stuff has kind of gone off the tracks here. And what do I mean by that? Um, I'm someone
You
who is
mean the
very
whole
freedom-minded.
feminism
I'm
talking
very
about LGBT
freedom-minded. I'm very
knowledge?
against
Okay.
all these special interests and special laws and special um, what's it called? Special treatment given through whether it be affirmative action or these discrimination lawsuits or different things. I'm against all that kind of thing. I'm against all that. Oh, I made a joke. Now I'm going to be sued for sexual harassment. Or, oh, I feel I have to hire women because we don't have enough women working here, and someone's going to stage a boycott or someone's going to sue me or just whatever. So I'm very against that kind of thinking. Um,
Yeah,
I'm
but
very
that's because those
free-minded.
laws cease allowing you to base people on their merit. Those laws which seek to remove discrimination, in fact, actively encourage it because it
And
encourages you to actually only view people by the color of their skin or the form of their genitals rather than what they can actually do. It
yes,
actively
yes, and
encourages what it's trying
oh
to
yeah,
do.
it actively affirmative action and quota setting, which it does lead to quota setting, actively does encourage you to view things like that. But even if I was viewing people on their merit, it would have discriminatory results. It always will, and that's what they use. Is they look at, oh, he hired a lot of men, therefore discrimination. Sure, maybe, but maybe I'm doing it because obviously if I'm doing it, I'm doing it because I see value in it. That's the point. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. It should be up to me to make that choice. And if I'm some kind of stupid idiot who doesn't hire women just because I'm bigoted, then I will be outcompeted by the firm next door who both has a better public relations situation for hiring women and should have the competitive advantage because I'm hiring a bunch of stupid men over the smarter women or the better performing women that I could be hiring. But yeah, that is the basis of it. And there's gynocentric laws because there is this idea that there's a war on women or a war of the sexes, and I would agree to the extent that they have different biological imperatives, and that would involve things like the horrible divorce laws we see in place, the child support, the child custody, saying it's in the best interest of the child to be with the mother. And a lot of that feeds into the child support. I think if we
But
got rid of
that's
child
a
support,
relatively new advent, though, isn't it? The idea
it's
of children only going to the mother. That was something that only came about in like the 1900s
oh,
or the
this
early
is this
1800s.
is
Before that, it would go to the father as a
oh
default
yes,
because
and that
he would
makes a
have the
lot of
resources.
sense. It makes a lot of sense that would go to the father. He's the only one who can actually gather resources other than a woman hooking. Um, he's the only one who could gather resources. These jobs people worked back then were
Yeah, I'd be a bit careful with that because that law was in place in a time when women had less access to work. Now, you can't just scream sexism because women had less to work, which is what had less access to work, which is what feminists like to do, because it was also a time when the women were not held accountable for their own debts, were not like held account for their actions and their spending as much. It was their husband or their father that would be held responsible for that.
mm,
So it was kind of a double-edged sword in that regard.
yeah, there's certainly a lot of double-edged swords from would you really want to do a lot of those jobs back then if you weren't an aristocrat? And a lot of us aristocratic women did get to pretty much do whatever they want. They weren't necessarily taken as seriously as the men, but for the most part, they could play business or something like that. But going back to what I'm saying, it's
Well, they could because they
kind
had
of
rights to own their own private property. They had the rights to their own private things. It just wouldn't be funded if they tried to do any other sort of venture, like tried to, say, get a loan from a bank or something, because the bank would look at her credit and say, well, you're not actually legally obliged to pay this back. It would be your husband or your father, so we're going to look at his. Oh, guess what? His rating sucks. We're not going to give you the money.
yeah,
But then that was a society where it would be like, well, now it makes sense that the kids will go to the father because he is the one that is financially responsible. The mother is not actually legally financially obliged to give anything to their kids or their husband. Like, even if the woman actually owned a business, she would not have been legally obliged to pay for the upkeep of the children or to pay anything to her husband, but her husband would have been legally obliged to pay for the kids and her. And this is like one of those fucked up laws that existed centuries ago that we've kind of got rid of because it was not in anyone's best interest.
Yeah, and credit is kind of this is very off topic. Credit's so fucked up these days. You can have bad credit, and people are gonna throw credit cards and whatever else loans everything at you, and that's something I actually talk about a lot with MGTOW is the university system. The university system here is just highly expensive, and the main reason is these government tax-backed loans that are given to people no matter what. They're given not on the basis of can this person pay it back, or attaching any kind of what is it called, a secured debt, anything like that. Their car or their house isn't attached to it, and their ability to pay back is attached to it. It's just attached because they have poor protection laws. You can't declare bankruptcy. You can't get out of these debts. One, which is very weird to put young people into a debt that they can't get out of, and then two, it's like based on this religious thing of the way people view the university system and education. And the universities are kind of the churches. I would call them the cathedral of this whole women's studies, feminism, gynocentricity. And as far as feminism goes, I just view that as the political arm of the gynocentric imperative. I view feminism within all women, even women who would be very free market, very pro whatever, pro free markets, pro capitalism, all that. I would still view them as feminists at their core, in the view that they analyze fairness, and the way they analyze fairness, it's a very emotional thing. It's a very me thing, where it's just never good enough. And that's why you have these feminists talking about equality when they're clearly talking about getting preferential treatment.
Well, no, they're not talking about equality. They're talking about equity.
They say equality, though, and they
I know
mean
they say
equality.
equality. No, they don't know what equality means. Feminists
and
don't
they would
understand
argue
equality.
to you. And to them, equality or equity, as you call it, would be.
Well, it's because it's different. What
their
they
best,
want is,
what they want the most would be you getting detrimental treatment that's detrimental to you, and them getting preferential treatment. They would want the combination. If they can only one, they'll want you getting detrimental treatment.
That's because they want the outcome to be identical without identical input. That's what they want. That's what I mean by equity. Like when we say
also, some of them will admit to the identical outcomes, but for the most part, they want preferential outcomes. They like to hear women in this country, in my age group, I'm in my 30s and below, are employed and make more money than men in the similar age group. Women are going
only if they don't have dependents.
Yeah, women are going to university.
If they are in the exact same situation, then it's comparable. In some cases, women will earn more.
Women do better in school.
You can't make it as a blanket statement, obviously.
Well, I think it is a blanket statement. I think statistically, unless I was looking at the wrong statistics, women are more employed than men.
Women who are in their... If you take an exact side-by-side comparison, as in a single unattached woman in her 20s and a single unattached man in her 20s, on average, the women will earn more. But the problem with that statistic is it does the same thing that the feminist 77 cents to a dollar does, where it's kind of like, if we just take all of these women and all of these men, on average, the women in that particular category will earn slightly more than the men.
Well,
but then
I'm
also
not about statistics. I'm not about statistics.
That's why I'm going on about this.
The biggest thing, the reason I brought up the statistics,
who have a dependent, they are then the ones who will earn less, but that's because again they have a dependent. So a single woman with a dependent will earn less than a single man without dependent. So this is where this thing becomes kind of fucked up and where everyone is misrepresenting everything. The reality is, if you have people in comparable situations, in comparable jobs, it will be the same. Now, what they're looking to do here is to basically say, well, no, we want it to be the same regardless. As in, a single man without dependents, we want his total paycheck to be the same as a single woman with dependents working part-time. And it's like, well, no, you can't do that because they're not doing the same thing. And this is why you get this feminist push where they say, oh, we want to make it so that we want to like socialize housework so that women will get paid to basically clean their homes. You know, it's this thing when feminists talk about this untapped, underappreciated, unpaid labor force, this free labor. It's like, well, no, that's what you should be doing anyway. You shouldn't be getting paid to do this. This is just something that you should be doing for your own personal upkeep because it's your own personal choices. take responsibility for that. But this is what they talk about when they want that. This is why there's this big push for feminism where they want equity. They don't actually want equality. They want the outcome to be the same regardless of what the input is. Because the thing is, when you actually account for all other things and the input is identical, or as nigh identical as it can be, the output is again as nigh identical as it can be. And this is the difference between the equality and the equity thing. So what most of these modern feminists are pushing for with these sort of gynocentric laws that we keep mentioning is that they want the equity in the outcome, and they want to try and enforce that as much as possible so that they don't have to put in the same amount. They are expressly trying to override the merit stage of it and just say, well, everyone deserves the same output regardless of whatever they put in. Like, nope, that's not how this works, I'm afraid.
Well, here's what I would say. You can argue statistics to other men, and certainly I like hearing stuff like that. It's not 1 in 5 college women raped, that it's something like 0.03 in 5 college women who get raped, and that a woman in college is statistically less likely raped than someone who a woman in college is statistically less likely to get raped than someone who is in college.
Yes.
And I like to hear about.
Hang on, I'm actually going to get the exact figure. I want to see if I can find it.
I think it is exactly 0.03. But if
there it is. Hang on. I've got it. The rate of rape and sexual assault was 1.2 times higher for non-students at 7.6 per thousand than for students at 6.1 per thousand. Fucking laugh at that.
And I like to hear about
women
things
are being
about how
raped on campus in record numbers. What, you mean less than the women who are
we
outside
live in a rape.
campuses?
To me,
Right.
stuff like this makes sense. That we live in a rape culture, and then to have a statistic point out that rapes are actually on the crimes are actually on the decline. But two women, they're not looking for. Oftentimes they will say they're looking for equity, and they throw statistics at it. I don't think it helps to argue with them with statistics. I think to talk to other men, it helps to talk about statistics. But what I would say is,
I think that's a fundamental mistake there. It's not about making a gender division here. It's not about saying, well, I'm just going to take these statistics to the men rather than to the women. What you're actually looking to try and do is to show that these statistics are bullshit to everyone. This is what I frequently say about what I do on my channel. Is it's kind of like, I'm not interested in convincing the people who I'm pointing out are wrong, because they're never going to admit that they're wrong, or they very rarely ever will. Well, the people that I'm trying to show that this is all nonsense to are people who haven't really looked into it. They're the fence sitters who have no real idea what's going on. And it's kind of like, well, this person says this number with no real evidence, or evidence that's like fucking decades old and has been taken out of context. And then this person comes along and says, well, this is why their evidence is out of context. This is why it's wrong. And here's the actual number.
Yeah, I'm going to go 60 MGTOW on you for a moment. I'm not going to say women are not human, because they are.
Oh, please
but they're not men. They're not men. What I'm going to tell you is these feminists, they're not necessarily even looking for equity. That's a lot sometimes the pitch they pitch is that they don't like outright say, but obviously they're looking for equity of outcome. But they often, if they can get a women doing better than men, they will cheer something on, like women.
They absolutely will. That's why they
constantly
push
cheer on
like
studies show women. They'll cheer on something like studies show women smarter than men. Studies show women are graduating from university in higher rates than men. They cheer that kind of thing on.
Absolutely, they do. Absolutely, because they have no shame in that sort of thing. Because again, while they are looking for equity, but again, they're not looking to put the same in. They're looking to get the same out. But yeah, there are absolutely feminists out there who will say, no, we just want women to do better than men at everything, fucking regardless. They'll take what wins they can get. Like I said, Violence Against Women Act. Assault against a woman is treated as a different crime to assault against a man, and it's punished more harshly. Like, well, why? It's just assault from one human to another. But there is this law that specifically states that no, it's a different crime for reasons unknown, even though when you actually analyze the statistics for assault, it's like, well, no, women are about 5 times less likely to be the victim of every kind of assault than a man. Why
exactly.
is that? Why is it then treated as being worse? I mean, it's equally as bad in both cases. It is equally as bad whenever any person is the victim of any sort of assault. There is no justification for it under any real circumstance. So why is it treated differently from one to the other? And I have yet to
Because
hear feminists answer this. I have yet
I
to hear
actually
them
have the
say this
answer
is
for
bullshit.
you.
We need to get
I
rid
have
of
the
it.
answer for you. In a gynocentric society we live in, a gynocentric society, we live in a society where the courts, the laws, um, use their discretion to view men as bad and women as good. And that is the answer I would give you. And
No, I
what
know that
happens?
this is the reason. I know that we have a society that is gynocentric. This is not something that I ever debate. I
Yeah,
know
and
this is obvious that we have this. I'm trying to actually stop this from being the case because this is
and
bullshit.
I'm putting out the reason why it's gynocentric, and it's because men and women have competing mating strategies, and that's why
Yeah, but
if you
does
get
that
married to a
prove that the
woman,
mating strategy is competing? But
yes.
how is that competitive?
Why
How
would
is
you say it? Why
gynocentricity
would you say it
going?
happened? Would you say it just flowed from nowhere? That you're in a situation where part of a divorce tactic for a woman would be, or even it doesn't have to necessarily be a divorce. Part of the tactic would be a lawyer would suggest to someone. This is very very documented. Domestic violence claim on a man because that will guaranteed get him out of the house, get you sole possession of the house, and that there's
But that's not
zero
a
due
mate.
process in a domestic violence claim.
But that's not a mating strategy.
It is a mating strategy
No, it isn't.
because
You'll never
this is
divorce a man if you want to breed with him. Therefore, it's not your mating strategy.
you've already bred with
The,
him or someone
but
else.
therefore, it's not your mating strategy anymore. You're not interested in mating with him anymore. Therefore, the divorce is not part of your mating strategy. Your mating strategy is when you take all of that money, fuck off down the bar, paint yourself up, and find the next guy. That's your mating strategy. The divorce has
Well,
nothing to do with that.
it's a strategy for providing for provisioning resources, and we're seeing it go out of control here. There's a big story in the United States of a man who he has a DNA test. He was actually he didn't sign a birth certificate, but when he was in prison, a woman in Detroit or somewhere in Michigan, whatever, I think it was, put his name on the birth certificate so that she could get government benefits. You have to put someone's name down, I guess, so that
Was
the state can
the
then go
actual
after the
father?
man.
Sorry, I kind of missed the first half of that sentence. I got a bit of jitter on my headphones.
Oh, that's fine. I don't know if I'm
Start
going
over
in now.
again. It kind of just cut out for a couple of seconds there.
Oh, yeah. I hope my internet connection's good. But
No, it's
anyways,
mine. I think you know that thing where you get that kind of robot at the start of some sentences. I'm getting a little bit of that.
oh yeah, that it's not necessarily. Excuse me. Now I'm talking like a robot. It's not necessarily yours, but yeah, I'll start over. There's a man in I think it happened in Detroit. It's like a Michigan area case. He was in prison and
Nope,
had
there we
to.
go. There we go. Happened again. Fucking hell. The internet does
Uh,
not want me to hear this story.
well, if I keep having internet problems, I
The
might end the
matriarchy is stepping
broadcast.
in. No, these men are making too much sense. Shut it down.
All right, let me see. I'm going to try it again. In Detroit, a man got put on a birth certificate when he was in prison. A woman wrote his name down on the birth certificate for her child because she needed to write a name down to get government benefits, and she just decided to write this man's name down.
Right.
Did you get that so far?
Yep. Guy
All
in
right, good. Okay.
prison. His name is on a birth certificate.
Yeah. So
Done.
now because she put his name down, even though he's in prison, he's able to get a DNA test, prove the kid isn't his. Even the woman's admitting, yeah, I just had to put a name down, so I just put his name down. So all that's out of the way. They're still at this point making him pay. Um, a judge has decided that he needs to pay something like $30,000 or something like that in child support fees.
Yeah, but that's bullshit. This is just a massive miscarriage of justice.
And it happens all the time. This whole idea that if a man was
How
married
much?
when the baby was
How
born,
much?
whether
How many
whether
times?
the kid
How
was
many
his or
times?
not, he has to pay. And these start off as laws that were in a men's favor. Um, how would that start? Before child support laws were crazy like this, it would stop another man from coming into a marriage and saying, um, hey, that kid, that's not his, that's my kid. And the man can say, no, it's my marriage, these kids all belong to me. But now these things are being used against men, so if they're in a marriage and a wife does have a kid that isn't theirs, even with a DNA test, they can't get out of that. It's, oh, you were married, that's your kid. This is something that started off to protect a man, but now it's being used against him because we now live in a very, like I keep saying, gynocentric society, and these laws don't come out of nowhere. These are very much to a woman's mating strategy and to a woman's true nature that these things are happening. And I would say that men have been the guiding force in all of civilization. And I don't take credit for someone like Einstein's inventions or contributions to society. But what I will say is that It is men who have fostered civilization in society, and it's been men who have brought us forward as far as we have. And certainly, women play a part in that. But what I would say is that men have been the dominant force in all of this, and that now that we're giving the reins over to women in a lot of ways to even just choose who they're going to date, it's been to horrible consequences. And that's a lot of what, like, gynocentric society is a lot about what holding up single mothers, for instance, as being like widow heroes. That's what it's all about. And hopefully I didn't cut out all while I was saying all that,
Yeah,
but go ahead.
widow is a very different from single mother by choice, though.
Yes, and they want us to view these widow heroes and their children as orphans almost, that just need to be provided for.
I
And I
don't
would
know.
argue,
I view a single mother who is a widow very differently from how I view a single mother who like had a one night stand.
I do too,
Because it's
but
kind of like, well, no, one of you made a really fucking stupid decision. The other one of you is kind of just the victim of an unfortunate circumstance.
I again would say women are being applauded for stupid decisions these days, and
Oh,
the
people are applauded for stupid decisions these days in
no,
general. It
people
doesn't have to be
certainly,
one gender.
but women especially.
Is
And
it women especially though?
yes, you can certainly hold a man much more accountable for whether it be a crime or any other bad decision than society will allow you to hold a woman.
But the thing is, we are moving towards that though, very slowly, and obviously there is a great deal of backlash on this from feminism, because, well, they want to have their cake and still be able to somehow eat it. But we are seeing cases where it's like in divorce proceedings, we are seeing men now being paid because the women are earning more, and this we are sort of slowly getting to revise some of these ridiculous laws.
Even if the woman who earns more than you in a divorce, which is still because of hypergamy, it's not going to be so likely. But even if you
I
are in a
wouldn't say it's
situation,
necessarily hypergamy. I'd put it down in some cases to the personal choices of some women. I mean, if it's a woman who's like, no, I actually chose to be a mother and to give up my career while my husband or boyfriend went out and did the work, then it's kind of
no,
like, well, no, it's reasonable that she would now have
even
less.
if a woman is a doctor, and she marries a garbage man, she's being a doctor, um, at some point and want to be with her children, if she decides to have children. But the point is, even if a woman does make more money, she still has a lot of things at her disposal, from being false rape charges to false domestic.
Oh, there we go. That's a cutout.
Oh, even if a woman does have more money, she's very likely to use the things at her disposal, whether it be false domestic violence charges, or false rape charges, to protect what's hers. These are things men don't have at their disposal. That's a very clear point that people need to understand. Is even if a woman does have more money, which is unlikely, she has a lot of tools that she can use against the man, that a man can't use against a woman.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely correct. I mean, we know that that is a thing that happens, but these are the sorts of things that need to be addressed, and that are very gradually being addressed.
Oh yeah, certainly. I
But
think they should be
obviously,
addressed.
we have the pushback, well, as we've said, from feminists who do just want to have everything.
Yeah, and what you need
But
to understand
I
is,
think out there though we're getting. I mean, there are increasing numbers of women who are looking at feminism saying, no, this is not right, that this can happen.
mhm.
And obviously they are well, unsurprisingly, the sort of women against feminism, where it's like, no, these things that are happening are unfair and they do need to change.
I'm gonna take a quick look at the chat. See, I'm sure it's probably kind of crazy. I'll take a quick.
With all 47 people watching. Hello, all 47 people.
That's a lot
Only
for
one of
me
you
to be.
pressed the like button. More of you should press the like button. I
Oh,
might
that's
have to
fine. I don't.
refresh the page to see that, but I'm not going to. Actually, no, I can, because I don't need this thing open.
Let's see. Let's see.
Oh, 40. One of you hit the dislike button. Who did that?
I just called some
Out
people.
them right now.
We got Wolfie, Inu, Norse Ski Man, who was in here the other day. Let's see, Kwame Digital, Pico, Ray and Sheena YT. There's a lot of people. Pico again, MGTOW in self-training. All right. Anyways, yeah, I'm not gonna read any more of these. Let's go back to our conversation.
Hello, Pico. I see you saying hello. Yeah, you can have your fanboygasm now. You got Senpai noticed you.
Yeah, man, good job noticing it.
Anyway, I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for this proof of competition. I'm still waiting for
Yeah,
this.
I'm pretty sure that my internet's causing the problems here, so I'm sorry that I keep cutting out.
Ah, that's fine.
Um,
It's normally
let's
mine,
see.
so I'm happy to know what it
Well,
feels like.
some of this should be proven to you through anecdotal evidence in
The
your own
problem is
life.
anecdotal is anecdotal.
Well,
Anecdotal
a lot
doesn't
of it,
mean a whole lot. I mean,
a lot of
I
what makes
can
out is
absolutely agree that there is a gynocentric aspect to society. This is undeniable because we do have laws that favor women over men. We do have overwhelming examples of court cases that favor women over men for really no discernible, rational, logical reason. So, it's an undeniable thing that it happens. But I'm waiting for this evidence over there to be proven that it's like, no, this is proof that we compete with each other. When
okay.
I'm
There's
still not
even
seeing
like
how that's the case.
age of consent laws. Even here where I live, it's 18 is the age of consent. Um, why is it so high? Historically, it was never that high before. Why should someone who's 18 automatically, without even a court case, be presumed to have raped someone? And we're talking about not petty charge. We're talking about facing 15 to 20 years in prison for an 18-year-old man having sex with a 15-year-old girl, for example. Is that so wrong? I don't know. Shouldn't it go before a court if it's going to be a rape? No, we have age of
Well,
consent laws.
that's why it's not rape; it's statutory rape, which is a
And
different
statutory
crime.
rape,
Which is a
it's not
different.
called
It's a different crime from rape.
it's not called statutory rape here, and I'm not going to get super into legality, but what it is it's a situation where it's not going to be explored by the court. And I think any court case that's a rape shouldn't be ipso facto automatic like that. An age of consent law is a very new concept. I
Well, yeah,
believe
those
it's only
things
about
are
200 years old
questionable.
max.
And that's
And they,
why we see that things like the age of consent. I mean, I think the lowest country, I don't know the actual country, but I think the lowest I've heard it ever quoted as being is 12, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And the highest I've ever heard it is like 20.
yeah, and
Obviously, I
um,
don't actually have any specific evidence for those, so I'm not going to chisel them in stone and say that's definitely where it is. But it seems to me that as a species, we really can't decide on specific things like when someone is ready. So it's kind of like we just have to literally draw a completely arbitrary line and say, yeah, that's about right. But
look, here's
this is
what
why I always think that there should be cases where it's like we have a statutory rape thing, which is just like only one of the contenders or one of the parties is below the age of consent and the other is over. But I think the most important thing in those situations is to look at the difference in the age, because obviously if it's say like a 30-year-old person and a 12-year-old person, you can kind of look at that and say, yeah, that's probably a bit predatory. But when it's like a 16-year-old, and well, obviously I'm going to say 16 because here in the UK it's 16. If it's a 16 and a 15-year-old, for you it would be like an 18 and a 17-year-old. It's kind of like, well, hang on, but they were doing this beforehand, so it's kind of like, okay, so in your instance, you could have two 17-year-olds in a sexual relationship. One of them then has a birthday, they continue doing what they're doing, and then the next one has their birthday 6 months later. Well, for that 6 month period, they were committing a felony. It's like, well, that makes no sense. So that's why I
here's
think all of those cases need to be examined closely, and it needs to be done based on the discrepancy of the age. But again, if we wanted to look at discrepancy of age, we then have to start again drawing more arbitrary lines and saying, well, would it be 5 years apart where it becomes a little bit weird? Would it be 10 years where it becomes a little bit weird? What is either way, we have to draw a completely arbitrary line.
yeah, I agree. I think the arbitrary line should be low. I think it should be low. I don't see a problem with being 12. And what I would say is if a 40-year-old has sex with like a 15-year-old, maybe he should go to jail for 15 years if it's rape. I just don't believe in it
Well,
being
the thing
an
is,
ipso
again,
facto thing.
even in those circumstances, the thing is, when you start talking about cases like this, even I admit that there is a degree of personal bias here because I'm inevitably going to have a different idea of what is considered acceptable than someone else. Like, someone might say, well, you're 30 and this other person's 15, but you might actually genuinely have some sort of connection whereby you actually give a shit about each other. It might actually not be a predatory relationship.
Yeah.
But the wider the gap, the more likely I am to say that it's like, well, no, the wider the gap, the more likely it is that it's being an intentionally predatory relationship. But still, it's, how do you prove this sort of thing?
All I'm saying is prove it through evidence and a trial, not this just thing like she's 15, he's 18, ipso facto, we're going to put you in prison. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying have a trial. That's all I'm saying. If you're saying it's rape, there should be a
But then
trial.
we
There should
come
be
to the
due
wonderful
process.
double standard of, well, she's 18, he's 15. Well, guess which one of you's paying child support? Like, wait a minute. Hang on.
It, exactly, and that goes
That
back to
case made
bias
me
in the
laugh.
court
It was just
system.
like, no, no, this is a miscarriage of justice. Fuck you. Take this one back. Have a judge that actually thinks competently about anything preside it. Because the previous one had absolutely no fucking idea how to think. That case was bullshit when I heard that.
Yes, certainly. That is bullshit. Complete bullshit.
But again, it's an
Well,
ungendered issue.
I would say you've played devil's advocate. We had this conversation yesterday, and I certainly wasn't able to get you to say that women and men have competing sexual interests. But we certainly agree on pretty much everything we've discussed today. It's just kind of the conclusion
Well,
that
again,
I
this is
really don't think
why I look at it and I say I don't think that you can prove that it's competitive. You can assert that it's competitive. You can say, well, because we have gynocentric laws which indicate a favoring of one gender over another in a society, which is pretty clear because we do have that framework. If we didn't have that framework, it would be a more dubious claim. But to that, the link between like 90% provable gynocentrism, because again, even that I still find, I mean, I happen to think that yes, we do live in a gynocentric society. There is large amounts of evidence otherwise, but I still think that it is possible, just possible, that that could be some sort of tail end of previous laws and previous times. It's unlikely because of how it's continuing on, but there's still that very, very slim chance. But now trying to put a link between that and then say, well, this means that therefore competing mating strategies from male to female, I'm not seeing this link.
all right. Well,
There does not seem to be any objective reason that this link could exist.
all right. I'm gonna say my final statement. And did you want to say anything before I say my final statement and close the show? I'm gonna give one. Was that your final statement?
I was not aware that there were final statements. This is just, as far as I'm concerned, what we're doing here is, it's not even like debate or anything like that. It's just kind of like we just want to sort of explore this idea and see sort of where
No, that's how I view it too.
we go.
That's how I view it too. But I do have a different conclusion too. And we certainly explored the idea, and we certainly pretty much agreed on everything we were saying, except for the conclusion. And the reason I have the conclusion I do is because women in today's society are getting things to their way towards their mating strategy, as far as everything I mentioned: consent laws, the whole men not being able to pay for sex, yet women being able to get child support, the whole just the way discrimination works. There's no discrimination against men. Not that I would want there to be discrimination against men lawsuits, because that's stupid. That's moving things in the wrong direction. But there are discrimination against women and other special protected classes, which that's the kind of thing I'm against. And at the end of the day, for a man, a relationship is a very risky thing, and it's a liability. It's a liability. And for a woman, it is a benefit. So even if naturally, which I would say naturally, we have competing strategies, and I would say men have been dominant force in up until now in having things go towards their mating strategy. But what I would say is that women are getting their way right now as far as the laws, and it's going towards their mating strategy. And what I would say is a relationship with a woman is a liability for a man and a benefit for a woman. And
Yeah, I would still say that on this point, though, I would still want you to give a definitive, this box is the female mating strategy, this box is the male mating strategy.
mhm.
And this
Well,
still seems to be something that it can't happen. I mean, again, if we look at that SOI chart, or the SOI study that I referenced earlier, again, it kind of shows that it's like there may be general patterns to it, but you still can't definitively state that this is the strategy of one group and this is the strategy of another group within the same species. Because we do,
it's
after all, have abstract mating principles whereby some individuals within a species will run completely counter to it. I mean, to give you a perfect example, of all the random animals, cuttlefish, um, big display creatures. The females are very submissive and demure. They dig out a burrow, lay their eggs, and basically sit there and wait for males to come along and display. And obviously, there's two mating strategies used by the male there. One of them is the big males get up, they puff themselves up, big bright colors everywhere, beat the shit out of each other. And then there's a second male breeding strategy where they actually shrink themselves down, color themselves as the female does, and just kind of slip on in there and do their thing. And that's an example of two competing strategies within one thing. So again, this idea that everything within one species must follow one strategy, again, I think is an incorrect assertion to make.
oh, and I certainly
And to
don't think
then
it must
say that
follow
we've
one
got a box
strategy.
for each is, again, wrong, which to me, again, kind of implies that how can we link things and say that there is a competition here when we can't even stick a nail in it and say, well, this is the strategy used by one and this is the strategy used by the other?
I would say one strategy takes that species in one direction, and another strategy that you just described takes that species of fish in another direction. And depending on which one's more successful, you're either going to see more competition or you're going to see more pretending to sneak around
Well,
in the
that's just it.
species.
You don't. It's pretty consistent
Okay.
throughout
Well,
all the
they've reached
generations.
back to that word. I guess they reached some kind of equilibrium. But in humans, different human societies, depending on if they're more gynocentric or not, have very different results. And I would say Sweden is going in a very different direction than, say, a place that isn't as feministic, to use a word that I don't know if it's a real word or not, but
To use a word that we've just made up,
to use
feministic.
a word that yeah,
It
works.
should be a word.
If it isn't, there you go. Now you have it. Sweden is more feministic than pretty much anywhere. But
I'd just say it's more feminist for
yeah,
the
it's
sake of
feminist.
grammatical correctness.
It's feminist. The place that's more feminist to a place that's less feminist, less gynocentric, you're going to have very different results, is what I would say.
But here's the thing, I would say if you want to make a claim like that, I would say, well, you have to now try and objectively prove to me that the way men attract women in Sweden is different from the way men attract women in, say, Australia, which is then different from Argentina, which is different from Kenya, which is different from Russia, which is different from Alaska. You'd have to like sort of find these objective criteria for what women are looking for and what men are looking for and how men present themselves and how women present themselves.
I know for a fact, um, just from I don't have like a statistical sheet in front of me. I know for myself, it greatly affects me how I will pursue women and what I will do based on the way I've seen women to behave, coupled with the laws. It greatly affects the way I'm going to pursue relationships because it is a great risk to both my property, assets,
Well, I would only
and my
say that
liberty.
does it. Would it be more correct to say that it only affects you in regards to how you would perceive something like marriage, not
No,
necessarily your short-term mating
even
strategy, but anything
sex,
mid
even
to
just
long.
a hookup, it affects even that from everything from if you like young girls, is that girl who looks 20, is she really 20? Could she be 17? She's had a few drinks. I mean, that's kind of normal. Have a few drinks, then have sex, but it's now considered rape if she wants to later go back and consider it rape. Again, regret rape, a real thing. Um, that's basically where a girl regrets the sex later on. She wanted, she
Yeah,
consented,
again,
she
this
had a
is
good
another one
time.
of these bullshit laws that has somehow been ushered in when it shouldn't.
And
Because
there are
again,
even
the point of this is it's kind of like, well, okay, they were drinking, therefore they're not responsible. It's like, well, what is the objective line? Well, there
yeah,
is no
and
objective line, but no, but what is? If you can't just say that if alcohol is present in their system, then they are unable to do this. It's like, well, no, it can't just be any because you can drink and drive a car legally as long as your blood alcohol is below a certain objective marker.
exactly.
So
And
again, we need something similar for that case, and we don't have that, and that's why I think that law is fundamentally incorrect.
well,
If you could just put
personally,
an objective number to it, then it's kind of like, okay, reasonably, if you can put an objective number to it, okay, I will go with it. But then we also have to be able to state that it can go both ways, as in if the man has over that number and the woman does not, she is responsible for perpetuating a crime. That's what needs to happen.
yes, certainly,
Are
certainly.
feminists going to campaign for this? Because they're totally pro equality, right, guys?
No, no, no. Yeah, they're not pro equality, even that's what they constantly say. Very pro. They're very pro women getting special treatment and based on having a vagina, and that's not okay with me, and that's not okay with some women. And it shouldn't. It's not okay with some men, but it certainly goes against all men as far as the results of this. And what I would argue, and what I shouldn't even have to
Actually,
argue,
just one quick question. You say it goes against all men. What about men going their own way?
well,
Cha. Throw
men
that.
going their own way, that is a way to kind of protect yourself from a lot of this without any laws being changed. It's a way to kind of save yourself. You're not going to participate in marriage, even though if you met a girl that you both had a good relationship, chances are she'd probably, who knows, a lot of girls don't get married these days, but there'd be a good chance that she wanted to get married, or that in your head you'd feel, if you listen to society, oh, I should marry her because I like her now. We've been dating for a few years, and I like her. And well, isn't marriage the ultimate game move? I'll marry her, and I'm like locking in the goodness. Um, Going your own way, men going your own way is like an acronym that kind of has a library of ideas attached to it. One of them being um, marrying a woman is a slave mentality. It's a very detrimental thing to do to yourself as a man.
I don't think it's a slave mentality. I think the correct part of what MGTOW say on that is that basically all you're doing is sticking yourself into a legal fire that you don't need to be in. The state has absolutely no claim to your private relationship, and it's frankly none of their business. Your private relationship is your own business. You shouldn't have to declare to the state what it is, because then obviously as soon as you do that, they're able to start enforcing their laws into your own personal relationship, which they don't. Why would you do that? I don't understand. There is no rational reason for that to happen. It's not like we even still live in a society anymore where you had to be married in order to do something like open joint bank accounts or to benefit from any sort of special rate or special tax or special benefit or anything like that. We don't even have that anymore. There is actually no discernible reason to do so apart from to just announce to the state, hey, come and stick your fingers into my pie whenever you want. It's like, well, no. What's the purpose of that?
It's so
There
that
is no reason for it
women
at all.
can have more security, and that's actually the reason it started, was to give women security. So again, gynocentrism, I believe the reason it started was so that women could collect easily or more easily collect death benefits should their husband die at war or something like that. So it was done once again for women to start
Yeah,
this
but
whole
you can
marriage
have a
life.
will. You can have a will for that, though.
Oh, I believe there are much better ways, especially now, than to involve the government. But again, I'm just going into the history as I understand it. It was done to grant protections towards women. Again, not to benefit men, of course, to benefit women.
And now we have to kind of, I think, though, look at. We would have to look, I think, then at the origin of marriage, though. Would the origin of
The
marriage
origin of marriage,
centuries ago have been exclusively to benefit women, or would there have in
no,
fact been a benefit to both?
no, it was a benefit. It was a benefit to men, but certainly women benefited as well. Women have benefited from all these
So
things
it
men
was a
have done.
mutual. So it was a mutual of mutual benefit to both.
It was certainly of mutual benefit, but it was certainly done. All these things certainly were very man guided. This was not something that women came up with. This was very male. Male. These were male-dominated societies. These were male-dominated religions, and this was very much, especially in Western culture, all these things. These were great things for women, but certainly it's men who have been the guiding force in this. And back in the day, a woman was your property. Certainly, she wasn't a chair or a cow or anything like that. She was a woman, treated as a person, but she was property of yours, and your children were assets. This was your retirement plan. This is where you want all your money to go. It's much different now, where it's just a bunch of liabilities.
Yeah, that seems pretty fair. Again, considering the things that we've talked about earlier, where you can say it's like women, not necessarily property in sort of the way that people think, but because they obviously had certain legal privileges insofar as they were in no way accountable for several aspects to do with their own legal lives, they would not be held accountable for it. The men would. Then it was a trade-off.
Yeah, women weren't
It was that
property
double-edged sword of history.
in the sense of being a sex slave or something like that. But they were, yeah, certainly legally speaking, yeah, they didn't have the same burdens as men. Weren't seen in the same way as men, and certainly the fruits of the marriage, as far as like children and things like that, it would be a 180 from what we see today. Best interest of the children certainly being with the man. And yeah, I mean, I had a really good time talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I really like you. I hope maybe I'll have you back on sometime in the future. Your channel's doing great. Anyone who is subscribed to me and didn't know about Teal Deer, please go check them out. Subscribe. I think I'm going to take a clip from this and put it on my main channel because I think we had a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you. Time
Yeah.
flies. I can't believe we almost talked 2 hours. Just like that. I want to try to keep this under an hour, but I actually don't mind when it goes longer. I get that a lot, and I had a great conversation with you. Thank you for making me think, and I guess I'm not used to having someone play devil's advocate so much with me.
This
I
is
know
what I
that.
am with MGTOW at the moment. I know there are areas of the MGTOW community that hate me, where it's like, oh, you're just trying to disprove MGTOW and all. It's no, I have absolutely.
Teal
I'm
Deer
not taking
is.
issue with the philosophy at all. No, I'm just being devil's advocate and pointing out among you there are fucking idiots and there are fucking insane people, just like on the other side of feminism. What are you going to do about it?
Well, the same way Nikola Tesla might tell us, fuck you, I'm not a MGTOW, but we all call him a MGTOW anyways. MGTOW is a thing where we can just label other people MGTOW. So, Teal Deer, even though you don't tag your videos with MGTOW and you don't go around telling people you're a MGTOW, you are a MGTOW, Teal Deer. Simply, if
Well,
not for the fact that you see the bullshit, and you yourself will never get married. At least I can surmise from your rhetoric. So,
yeah, no, that there's no legal benefit to that at all. None
so
whatsoever.
you are a man who looks out for his own benefit and tries to stay free and thinks free and seeks for truth. And I'm calling you MGTOW, whether or not you ever say it yourself or tag a video with MGTOW and call yourself one. I'm tagging you as MGTOW, and for the most part,
Yeah.
it's
The
not
only
part of my
time I will ever
identity.
tag a video as MGTOW is when I'm pointing at one and going, "My God, you're an idiot! Where do you come up with this shit?" Do you
And
even listen to what you say before you upload this?
there are certainly MGTOWs are individuals. I use the tag as long as it's useful. It's not like part of my identity. I certainly call myself a MGTOW. It's not like something I'm attached to. I just think it helps spread a good message, which is how stupid marriage, other things. And yeah, I'm certainly there are idiot MGTOWs. Sexy
There are
MGTOW
also some very
is a
sexy
pretty
MGTOWs
smart
out there.
guy. Smart guy. I certainly don't agree with him on everything, and I only bring him up because he's been one of you've pointed out on some of the things he said, which I certainly don't agree with him on everything. I certainly don't think it's necessarily the best tactic to go around calling women cunts all the time, and it's kind of funny, so I kind of enjoy it. But it's not necessarily the best tactic to say they're not human, which yeah, they're humans. They're
Yeah.
women. Men and women are very different. That's something I always point out. We're both humans, and the reason I even say that is because it shows that they don't come from an oppressed people. They come from men, same way I come from women. So we can't play the history game on that one. But yeah, hey man, I really appreciate coming on. This was really great.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it certainly. So there we go. It was a wonderful
Teal dear,
experience for me.
Teal dear,
Would
I
you like
knight
to do
thee.
any chat questions before we wrap up, or are we just going to leave them to their
Oh,
own
all right. I'll check
separate?
and see. I will. I'm not going to be able to go through all their questions because they've been probably chatting with themselves and
Yeah, they.
writing
I,
who
I
knows how
actually
much
just read
stuff.
a line from someone. I can't remember their username. They just said, "Yeah, no, I've been too busy reading the chat than listening to the actual broadcast." Like, great, thanks.
Yeah, they've just been kind of talking themselves. One person wrote, "Red pill equals painful truth of reality." What do you think of the whole red pill thing? Like saying red pill, the Matrix reference. Do you like it?
Um, and yeah, that's my opinion. It's one of
Okay.
those things. I listen to it. It's kind of like, guys, you wonder why people refer to MGTOW as a cult. You know, when you start talk about taking your red pills and come here, brothers, it's like, yeah, can you see why people might think this? Just a little
Um.
bit. Can you see?
Yeah, I could see.
Yeah.
I see. I view it as nerdiness. I view it as nerdiness.
It
I
is. I
actually
think it's just a
enjoy
very
it.
unfortunate reference. I think it's kind of like, no, the philosophy I think is fundamentally sound in the, you know, there are these things in life, you just need to think about them a little bit more. Actually realize that there is a sort of real world thing going on here. It's not like conspiracy nut job grab your tinfoil hat nonsense. It's no, there are laws, they are unequal. Deal with it. There is a reason for these. Here is the reason. And the reason is fairly well founded in some cases, in others, not so much. But the not so much points are the points that I will constantly rib MGTOW on.
Yeah, Kwame
As well
Digital
as
wrote.
well as their artificial womb will set us free. No,
No,
please
that's a
God,
good thing.
no,
I
no.
wish we had that. That would help women out too. But
It
that would.
would. I think most women would love it. Be like, great, what? I can have a kid and not have to shit it out of my crotch at the end of 5 months of throwing my guts up every morning? Sign me up. I'm sure some of them will love it.
Oh yeah. Oh, if it worked just as good or better than the real thing, and it became affordable, being a key word here, it'd be very widespread. But Kwame Digital wrote TLDR equals anti bullshit. Let's see.
Sounds about right.
Someone asked, Immortal Migto asked, "Are you an anti-feminist?" I would say maybe you characterize yourself. I don't characterize myself as an anti-feminist because I'm more. I view all women as feminists, so I don't like to focus in on feminists. Although politically speaking, I also like to point out that feminists are just general purpose leftists, general purpose socialists. But do you characterize yourself as an anti-feminist?
No, I've said in all my videos, I am not a MGTOW, I'm not a men's rights activist, I'm not an anti-feminist,
All right.
I'm not any of these things. I
I am
don't take a
not
label.
a men's right activist, and I am not a anti-feminist myself. And as far as MGTOW goes, it just personally I feel it works to tag my content with the tag MGTOW. It's not like a religious come forward brothers experience for me. Just myself speaking, but I'm certainly not a fraud. There's constantly people saying you're not MGTOW, I'm more MGTOW than you, and all this stuff like that. Well, I'm plenty of
Welcome to the
MGTOW.
red pill pissing contest.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, certainly. Like you're a purple pill, you're not red pill. Yeah, it is. It does. I do not like that aspect of it. That is one of the main things that annoys me. Is there are these red pill. That is perfect characterization of it. Red pill pissing contest. That's exactly what it
yeah,
is.
I assume you've seen my video with that at the end. Someone,
Yes.
someone once tried to tell me, it's like, no, this is not what happens. Oh, the levels of MGTOW thing, it doesn't mean anything. No one will ever bring it up as a competition or anything like that. It's like, no, they will, and they do. You're wrong. Unless you're telling me that no one has ever read something and interpreted it in a different way than the author did, which they fucking have, because the Crusades and any other religious war that's ever happened anywhere. No, people can read things and misunderstand them. Get over yourself.
Pretty much. Well, I think that's going to be it, and I'm just going to thank you again, even though I already thanked you, because you're getting very popular, and I think you're going to keep skyrocketing. So I'm glad that I'm talking to you while you're just, popular, not like 100,000 yet. But I think you're going to have 100,000 subscribers soon enough. I think that you've
That would
got a
be
great
terrifying.
British talking voice and all of that shit. So I'm really happy to have you on the show, and we will be ending the broadcast now. So goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, chat, and thank you for having me on this. It's been fun.
Oh yes, it has.